Hello, we are the economy team. My name is Gabriel and I shall be presenting today sources of income.
My name is Clayton. I will be tackling the governance system and the new currency on Mars.
I am Riona and I will be tackling time and taxes.
My name is Elsa, and today I will be talking about space laws and yeah.
So, our first source of income that I'd like to discuss is mining. So, in the future, I'm sure that foreign companies will race to go to other planets, first of all Mars, and use the close asteroids to mine for materials that could be useful for many things, such as jewelry and even because they're just precious and rare on Earth. We assume that these will employ our people also, since we are the first colony on Mars. And some of the materials that could be found on these asteroids would be platinum, gold, silver, and other rare earth materials. Also, we could also mine on Mars itself. Many expeditions should be held there because industrial materials will be found, such as aluminium, magnesium, titanium, and potassium. Now we'll move on to patenting. Scientists in the future will invent many new tech, even before we go to Mars and while we're on Mars. This can be patented and we can earn a lot of money from this. Some examples of the patented systems would be water extraction systems, metal mining methods, and 3D printed habitats. The multiple ways we could earn money through patenting would be that through licensing, selling, or keeping the patents exclusive. Now we shall move on to some other methods that we could make money on Mars. Tourism is something that we looked forward to give us a lot of income at first, but then we realized it's not really realistic for the first colony. I'm sure in the far future it will be available. It is not really realistic because, as some of the other teams have mentioned already, it's a very complicated system to actually get to Mars and back. And so, okay, the way it works is every 26 months there is a time window of 3 to 4 weeks. And in those 3 to 4 weeks, a shuttle can be sent to Mars and back. So either tourists would have to stay for 3 to 4 weeks and that's it, or they'd have to stay for the next 26 months to go to the next window. This is why we think that tourism is not really attractive in the first colony, but I'm sure it will be a good source of income in the future. Now, we could also earn a lot of money from scientific data. Mars would be a very good place to test out new experiments, since on Earth we're limited to our already well-built environment and gravity, and we can't really do everything we do in outer space there. Colonists could send environmental surveys and research findings to Earth. And finally, another of the key methods to earn more money on Mars would be media content. And this could be from films to even VR experiences in the future. I'm sure they'll be very realistic and very exciting to do on it. Now I will talk about jobs and labor. The first few jobs when we go to Mars, so the ones that would be needed immediately and even slightly before, would be engineers, miners, doctors, and habitat and energy technicians. Later on, throughout, while the colony progresses and future generations start looking for jobs, we would need manufacturing workers, robotic supervisors, tourism and hospitality workers, and energy exporters, among others, of course. Of course, as time progresses, robots would replace humans with the more dangerous and boring tasks, and humans would shift towards more problem-solving, reasoning, creativity, and other services. One final point I'd like to mention is that to make Mars look more enticing than Earth would be that the payment of every job on Mars would be 150% times the payment it would be on Earth. Now I'd like to hand on the mic to Clayton, who will Elsa, who will continue explaining now the laws and treaties and other aspects of economy.
Okay, so we've calculated the basic budgets for different aspects, and all of these are round up. So the total budget that we started with was 100 billions. Yeah. So like if you remove all of the ones that we already calculated, we still have about 4 billion to spare. So well, as you can see, that the one that used the most money is health, because they use a lot more equipment and basically all that. Trade. Next, I wanted to talk about trade and Earth relations. So basically, export markets is like very limited at the beginning, because we will only be able to import high value and low mass goods because it's easier to transport. But later on, Mars will have its own system of production and consumption. And Mars, at the beginning, it will heavily depend on Earth for important finance. So, as you can see in this third square, in this third rectangle, at the beginning we will need to sign legal contracts with major banks and companies to keep importing things to Mars so that the economy on Mars wouldn't collapse. Okay, liability, insurance, and launching state risk. Liability convention, it's a treaty signed in. So it's a treaty signed to make sure that all countries that launch objects into Mars, basically into the outer space, takes responsibility for the damage and waste produced. And it's also signed to encourage larger investments so that we will have a stronger safety design, clear risk-sharing contracts with sponsoring states. So apart from that, there's also these contracts and these laws that were signed. So the Outer Space Treaty, it's a multilateral treaty that forms the basics of international space laws. It was signed on the 27th of January in 1967, and currently there's 117 parties that are affected by this treaty. And this treaty was published in English, French, Russian, Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, and some other languages. This treaty entered in force on this 10th of October in 1967. And the rescue agreement was signed on the 19th December in 1968. It's basically about how all colonists, no matter where, and private or state, all of the spacecraft was returned to their country. And if, for example, this company's spacecraft was trapped in this one place, and the own company can't rescue it back, other companies should be able to help them to get it back. The liability convention is the one that I talked about in the previous slide, and registration convention was signed in 1976, and it's basically about how all spacecraft, like starships, rockets, and satellites, they need to be registered with the United Nations. The Artemis Accord is basically The Artemis Accord is related to the Artemis program by the United States, and it was signed on the 13th of October 2020, and there's currently 56 parties that are affected by it.
So now we shall be moving on to the governance system that will be used on Mars. For the first year or so, technocratic government will be used, where a panel of experts and scientists will be at the top of the government pyramid and will decide about any major decisions that need to be done in order for the colony to continue functioning well. As part of this government, we will also use a bit of ideas from communism, where food, water, oxygen, and other essentials are given out to the colonists and are sort of given for free, but that will be discussed about later. The US government will also have a big say in the colony's early years. This is probably because the US has the most chance of making a colony on risk in the beginning. This is because it is currently the most advanced project that is being done, and will probably be accompanied by Russia, China, and other countries later on in the future. Then we will probably move to a more democratic government, which means that the citizens will vote on the elected officials and the people at the top. The scientists and experts will still have a panel which will need to be talked with before doing any major decisions or things that could affect the colony, especially when it comes to science and the essentials. This will probably be done for the first 3 to 5 years, and from here the colony will start moving towards independence from the United States or its owner or from its own country. The food and other essentials will also have to be paid for and will not be given out for free like it was in the beginning. After that, we will move on to the United Martian Federation, which is an EU-type government, where any other colonies or maybe even splits will be integrated into one overarching government. It will also continue to be more independent, so the dependency on Earth is slowly reduced. We'll have futuristic federal government, blending key political systems such as federalism, democracy, and technocracy, working in harmony to make sure that the colony on Mars works well and doesn't have any wars or maybe conflicts. Some of its key principles are the survival first, which means that any decisions are made in good thinking for the colony, and as possible not to do harm to the colony or give it a bad name. Also, the colonies will all be working together for any potential breakthroughs or mining missions, for example. All revenue from tourism and in the future and mining missions will be given to the UMF and distributed throughout any colonies. The panel of experts and scientists will still be present. They will have a bit of a more reduced role, but will still need to be talked to and contacted for any major decisions that need to be done. The motto of the United Martian Federation is fairness, resilience, and innovation, which are the pillars of Martian society. We also constructed a constitution-type document which states that which ensures that survival, fairness, and progress are of utmost importance. The colony will work in a democratic type of government and will protect equal rights for all. The vital resources such as food, air, water, and electricity will be distributed fairly, and no person or family can buy too much of a specific essential to ensure that all people have enough to survive. Justice will be upheld by clear laws and fair courts. Also, there will be some lethal arms on Mars, but only a specific group of people, a sort of police force, can use them, and only in very bad situations. Life will focus on peaceful exploration, science, and cooperation, and all decisions that are made will safeguard sustainability for future generations. As I already mentioned, there will be a new currency also, which is called the Intersol. It will sort of be like a Martian dollar, having the same exchange rates to other currencies like the dollar, and will increase or decrease in value like the dollar. It will be a fully digitalized currency available through a software on a person's device to prevent too much inflation. A dual pricing system will also be implemented, which means that essentials such as food, water, etc. have a base price that won't be affected by inflation and will always be fair and the same. It will be subsidized. Other luxurious or non-essential items will continue using the earth market price and will inflate along with other markets. I will be passing on the mic to Gary.
Now, I understand taxes may not be everyone's favorite, but they are in fact essential for economy on Mars. So we will be working with the system. The essentials will be taxed at 5%. Luxury goods will be taxed at 10%. And things imported from Earth will be taxed at 15%. This is mainly because importation, especially from two different planets, is in fact quite expensive. All taxes go to the central fund, which allocates money where needed, and taxes will also go to make education and healthcare cheaper. Now, it's quite expensive to go to Mars, but it's, to be precise, 1.5 million per person. Now you might be wondering, how can a person afford this? The idea is that sponsorships will provide a lot of the money to help reduce the base price of the ticket to Mars. But remember, it is 2 planets. You're not going abroad to another country. It is going to be expensive. Now, for the first year, there's going to be some rationing of resources, since resources are quite limited, so essentials like food, water, and oxygen will be rationed. There will be a plentiful supply still, and this would eventually be phased out as local production continues to evolve. Now, the iterations are set per person to ensure survival and to prevent shortages, and these will be distributed fairly. Now, as for languages, the official languages will be English, Chinese, specifically Mandarin, and Russian, which are used for governance and technical documents. There are the registered languages, which are French, Spanish, Arabic, and Japanese, which will be used for cultural, education, and community purposes. Now you might be wondering how will people communicate with each other. For the most part, I wouldn't say language is that big of a problem, because when you think about it, in 2075 we'll have the technology to be able to communicate in our own language, and it will be translated quite easily. Now, how will time work on Mars? So, a day on Mars is called a sol, which is a little longer than a normal Earth day. It's 24 hours and 24 hours and a half roughly. So, how it will work is we'll make the second a little longer on Mars. That's why it's quite similar to Earth. It's easier, it can work easier. It's more human friendly and aligns with daylight. We will still have 7 weekday or 7 solar week. So it can be as similar to Earth as possible, and you know when your work days are, when your rest days are. It's less confusing. There will be 24 months per year. This is because a year on Mars is more than double that of Earth. So each month will have 27 to 28 sols. A year, I don't know exactly, but I believe it's around 669 Earth days on Mars. Now this also helps to ensure seasonal and climate cycles, so they can remain predictable. And as for time zones, there will be a Mars Standard Time Zone, and as colonies continue to grow and evolve all around Mars, then each colony will eventually make their own time zone, depending on their sunsets and sunrises.